Welcome, guys, to Alpaca. We're excited you're here. We're excited to share with you what we've been working on over on Broker API. So I'm Brittany Magnan. I am Business Operations Manager here at Alpaca. And today we're going to walk you through a good amount of things to get you guys started on building out the API. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started on a deep dive. This webinar recording and the slides will all be emailed to you. So feel free to share that with others who you think may be interested at your organizations or other people that are building with you as well. At any time during the webinar, feel free to type your questions in the chat box, and we will stop with each section and respond to any questions. Also, do not hesitate to get in touch. Send us some tweets at Alpaca HQ. We are all very active on lots of social media platforms, so we'd love to hear from you. Okay, so I'm going to hand it off to actually Zaima, who will be walking us through a good amount of Broker API.
Hi, everyone. I'm a product manager at Alpaca, and I'll be helping you guys walk through what live testing on our API looks like on the dash. We also have Dean here. I'll let him do a quick intro before I jump in.
Hey guys, I'm Dean. I'm a full stack dev here. So kind of working on the Broker API offerings and a little bit of our trading, and also the front end experiences. So the broker dashboard, which you'll see in a second. So if you have any questions, let me know.
All right. So a quick introduction on what the Broker API dash or the Broker API itself is. It basically enables anyone from anywhere in the world to build their own commission-free trading app with ease. You have the ability to experiment with our suite of APIs and access the functionality of an operational brokerage while becoming compliant with applicable rules and regulations. So a couple of benefits of Broker API Dash is that it's all-in-one solution to build your trading or investing app. We are dev first and very easy to use, and we have a very intuitive platform. We have an unlimited sandbox testing environment, and we also give you full access to the functionality of an end-to-end brokerage, and we have a great dynamic global tech support team that is on hand to help you guys out with any issues you run into. A couple of things that we're going to be going over in the webinar is setting up the Broker API Dash, how to create user accounts, what KYC is and how this process works, who can conduct KYC, and specific things to keep in mind when it comes to KYC itself, what it looks like when Alpaca conducts KYC versus a partner conducting KYC. We'll also look into how to virtually fund user accounts and how to easily pass orders on our dashboard. All right, I'm going to actually dive right in, and we're going to take a look at just setting up the dash. So the first time you sign up for the Broker API Dash, this is the first page that you see after you're done with your verification code and your account is on our systems. For the purposes of this, I'm just going to put in demo as my team name. You can choose to change this at any time. We're not very strict about it, so that's entirely up to you. If you decide to have an official company name later down the line, you can always update that. Once you click on OK, we just quickly want to know what best describes your product. And we have a couple of options here. We have broker dealer, challenger banks, established fintech. You can also say you're just trying this out for fun if you're not sure. But whatever selection you make, we'll give you a little snippet or description of what that means, just to make sure that it's aligned with what you're trying to do. And then when you click on next, we give you the option to generate your sandbox API keys. So the second you click on generate, you see the API key and API secret. Best to hold on to these if you're going to be doing a lot of testing. If you're going to be building on this, they'll definitely come in handy for you. If you save these somewhere, you can click on OK, and then it goes straight into the dashboard for you. I think the one quick thing where we'll mainly be focusing on in this webinar is under API devs and live testing. Quick thing to do to see what data looks like is to actually populate the sandbox. And what that does, it actually fills your account with dummy data, and we'll be looking at that in a moment. But it generally just updates dummy data so you can do a little bit of testing and see what it looks like on our platform. I'll pause here for any questions if you guys have them. Maybe we can dive into funding accounts. Oh, and if you guys have any questions, feel free to send them out in the chat. And we have folks here from the marketing team that will be helping us navigate through those. The first thing we're going to look at is how to really quickly create an account. And basically, that's to let you create and manage all the user accounts that you will have. And one of the first API calls that we're going to look at is just posting those accounts in. So I'm going to share my screen and show that to you guys. So basically what we're looking at is where we left off, which is API devs and live testing. This is an instance that has already been populated, but what we're going to do is we're actually going to figure out how to create an account. We have extensive documentation in our systems. So if you go into our site and then go into Broker API docs, and if you just do account, you'll see that there's a whole list of options available on what we allow you to do with accounts. But since we're just going to start by creating one, you can click on creating an account on the right-hand side. And it shows you what the call needs to be and the sample request model. When we're essentially, when you are adding users or creating accounts, we ask for some basic information. We want their contact. We want but also you as the broker partner or challenger bank will want them. You want the email address, phone number. You want identity information, disclosures, if disclosures for control persons and affiliated exchange or FINRA. We have different agreements depending on how you want your user to use the account that we'll want them to sign, and document verification, which we'll get to in a second, which is closer to the user's identity. What we're really going to do is we're going to be copying this call because that's what we're going to be using. And we're copying the request. We're going to post straight into accounts. I'm just going to quickly edit this email because I feel like you've used this one a lot. Yeah, and what you guys should see here is the account being created. You can see the status is submitted, what their crypto status is, it says paper only, currency, all of the information that we put in around their address, their identity, it's all going to show up here. So that essentially means the account has been created. I guess the account we're looking for is School Alpaca 100. If you go into accounts here, you can obviously use the get call, but you'll see that School Alpaca 100 shows up and it still shows the status is submitted. And the reason why it shows the status is submitted is related to the KYC process. So I'm going to hand this off to Brittany so she can kind of walk you through what happens after a user account is created.
Great, thanks, Seema. So kind of high level, just what is KYC? It's a term you'll hear a lot in the industry and anywhere in financial services, fintech, everywhere. So by law, know your customer procedures are required for financial institutions to establish the legitimacy of a customer's identity. This is also known as like a customer identification program. And it's also used to identify risk factors. So some of the risk factors that we take a look at are included in what you guys submit through the accounts API. And the reason we collect all of that information is it's a requirement, number one, and then also it's a requirement because of the fact that it helps us prevent money laundering, terrorism financing, financial fraud, as well as identity theft. So who can conduct KYC? The account opening process that Seema just walked us through right now is when Alpaca is the one who conducts KYC. So the other option is that you would conduct KYC yourself. So the question now is who is allowed to conduct KYC and things to think about when you're making this decision. So if you're regulated in your local jurisdiction as either an investment advisor or a broker dealer, or if you are a tech company who plans to partner with a locally regulated and registered entity, and if you have a full compliance team, AML team, as well as like an onboarding team and infrastructure to handle onboarding, then you have the opportunity to own KYC. So a couple pointers to keep in mind are just that there are tech differences and there are build outs for both of those. And in addition, if you do decide to conduct the KYC yourself, then there's an additional assessment and due diligence process that we would put you through mainly for AML purposes. First, kind of high level walk through some of the differences in the tech build out so you guys can do a little more investigation in broker API documentation afterwards if you're interested. So the events API has to do with what you just saw from Zaima when the account went into submitted. So the events API is where you'll see messages from kind of our internal system about the status of the account, as well as from our operations team if there's any additional documentation or anything that we might need from the user. So that would usually happen in the case that an identity verification fails and we need to do a manual method of verification. You'd get an update there letting you know what's going on and what we need. So that's for the US, there's no additional kind of tech build out past that. If you are outside of the US, the build out is with our Onfido SDK. So Onfido is a KYC provider that does documentary verification with biometrics as well. So what that means is a picture of a photo ID as well as a selfie that gets taken by the user. Versus in the US, we use what is a non-documentary method, which is just us pinging databases with the data points that you entered. So in the case that we own KYC, it'll go through kind of those account status changes that you guys can keep track of. Now, if you decide to conduct KYC, it looks a little bit different. So the difference in this account statuses would be that it would go after going through submitted, all that would go to active, and there, it would be on your team to kind of conduct any further due diligence that would need to take place. So the tech build out on that side is building out with the KYC provider of your choice. And then also the CIP API, which is your way of sending Alpaca pretty much all the data that came through from that KYC provider, as well as any additional information on investigations that took place afterwards to verify the identity or to mitigate risk. So now this kind of goes into, this is a little bit more in the weeds, so we won't spend too much time here, but if you plan to conduct KYC, we do ask that you submit us your AML program. So this would include customer identification program, KYC, CDD, and what we call EDD for enhanced due diligence. All of those procedures should kind of be listed in that AML program so we can just confirm that they're up to standards with our requirements, with our regulator. Also, we ask that you have like an AML procedure audit or general procedure audit as well. So then we just kind of ask that your internal team be built out sufficiently to handle the risk, which would be an AML compliance officer, as well as a chief compliance officer and a sufficient amount of qualified employees to handle onboarding. I'll take a break here. If you guys have any questions at all about this, let's wait a minute for questions to come in and hopefully we can give you guys some answers.
Quick question here. If we, let's say, wanted to offer trading to customers in countries that Alpaca doesn't currently support today, is this a mechanism we could do that if we had some partner KYC for that country and then pass through to Alpaca? Would that work, or is there something else we'd have to do as well?
Yeah, so great question. So we are entirely international. So there are only some countries that we're prohibited from doing business in due to sanctions and other risk factors, which we could, once we get in discussions, we could send you a list of what those countries are. Outside of that, we're open to everything. So whether you conduct KYC or we conduct KYC, all of the other countries are supported.
Right.
As mentioned earlier, if Alpaca conducts it, then you would have to build out the Onfido SDK, which you can find more information on in brokerage or the broker API documentation. But you also would have the option to conduct KYC as well, especially if you have a local provider that you work with that you would prefer or that your regulators kind of require or prefer, then you would want to be the one to conduct KYC, since that build out would be much easier for you to do than to rely on us to put together.
Sure.
Hello, my name is Hans. I just have one question. I don't know if it fits here, but we're sorting out the legal works here in Sweden and Scandinavia. And regarding this, if Alpaca conducts the KYC, who, in your view, owns the customer in the end if there's a problem? I don't know if this fits here or if this is later, but this is something the legal counsel asked us. I don't know if it fits here or in another time.
Yeah,
I mean, if there's some problem with the trading or something like that, like who legally owns the customer in that specific moment?
Yes, this question is a bit out of the scope of the webinar.
Yeah.
I think the best option to move forward with that would be to contact sales and get in a more deep discussion around the kind of the legal and ownership question. Yeah. But as just a general question, technically there are customers as well, but most communications will be conducted by you to the customer, and we won't usually have direct interface with your customer.
Yeah.
So
okay.
Yep. So but that would be a really great question, and really a conversation that kind of depends on your regulatory status as well and the region that you're in. So feel free to reach out to sales, let them know that you are on the webinar and that you have some questions on that, and they'll put us in touch.
Yeah, I'm in contact with sales as well. So. Thank you.
And I have a question. I don't know whether it fit in here or not, but we try to see. I mean, we are an investment advisor fintech company, and so do we have to have the RAA license to start the go live process? Because from our understanding, the go live process is very complex. There's a compliance. There's a KYC program. There's all kinds of pieces there, where technical interface or how to transfer our sandbox in product mode. I mean, but do you require, we already have the RAA license in US to start the go live process?
Nope, not at all. So we have various different partnership types that we can offer for you. So regulated or not regulated, and regardless of which region you're in, you should, we can talk a little bit more in depth about your specific situation and also how you kind of see the future of your company going. So this is also a little bit out of the scope of the webinar, but I do want to make sure I give you kind of a high level overview of that there is options for everyone, and it shouldn't deter you from wanting to build out. It would change potentially whether or not you could conduct the KYC, and there may be a few other kind of restrictions around solicitation, things like that. But we would have to talk a little bit more in depth and understand your specific regulatory situation and which direction you plan to move in going forward. So that would actually also be a great way to reach us is through sales, and then they can put you in touch with either myself or someone else who can kind of understand your regulatory situation a bit better and discuss in more detail.
Would you share your contact information later on with us, right?
Yeah. You'll want to go right through sales and just let them know that we were on this webinar, and they'll know who to put you in touch with. Either sales will answer some of your questions or they'll pull me in as well. So it's sales@alpaca.markets would be the email. Yep. And it'll be written in all of the slides that you get as well.
All right, wonderful. Thank you.
Yes.
Hey, Luis here. A quick question, if it's okay. Regarding KYC, if handled by Alpaca, is it for international customers? Is it usually an automated process, or is there do you have a number of a percentage of the amount of KYC applications that are approved automatically, if any?
Yeah, so this depends on the region that you're in, and also it depends on kind of the quality of the submission that you go through. So our recent build out with the Onfido SDK for international has gotten our verification rates up extremely high. Most of the time, so just to give you guys a brief overview of what Onfido SDK does is it verifies the legitimacy of the document as well as compares the selfie to the document. So it does kind of facial check in the beginning to make sure you're taking a photo of your face, and it also checks to make sure you're actually taking a photo of a document and that the photo is clear. So there's very little room for user error, which is great. And then once it gets to us, the only thing that could potentially slow it down is if there was a potential watch list hit on the individual or something like that. So, or unless it was a fake identification card uploaded, which we don't get much of that at the moment. But so there would be, if anything were to stop it, we have a pretty quick turnaround rate to get that taken a look at manually by our team, and then either push through to active or potentially request more information from you if need be.
A lot of the Onfido are automatically approved, is what you meant. Oh, perfect. That's awesome.
Yep. For conducting KYC when Alpaca conducts the KYC, that's what we're kind of referring to here. Most of the accounts are able to get through automatically after passing all of our KYC checks.
Yes, I have a small question. Can we have several accounts for a user? Does it change anything on the tax reporting on your side, or is it a low at all?
We have a couple of different really unique models that we're building at the moment and that have been built already specific to this type of question. So I'm not going to go dig into those on here, but that's also a great question to email sales@alpaca.markets, and they can explain in depth all the different options you have for a situation like that.
Yeah, I mean, in the fully disclosed case, for fully disclosed partnership, just if we can have several accounts for a single user, that was the question.
Yeah, they'll be able to kind of walk you through a little bit more in depth what that would look like. So we have a couple of different products that are being built in the roadmap, as well as some things that are already built that have to do, like you said, there's some restrictions around tax reporting, the type of account that it is. Because we do offer accounts outside of just strict brokerage accounts. We offer kind of a couple of other products. So I think that's something that sales would be much better handled to answer than trying to get through it here, if it's okay.
Okay, thank you.
So we're actually going to looking into how to fund an account, and we're looking at US accounts right now. So we're on the demo. So that's essentially going to be just putting together an ACH relationship and then funding that particular account. So I'm going to share my screen really quickly and show you guys how to do that. Yep. So we created an account, and now we're going to look at how we can actually go ahead and fund the account. So if you guys go back into our docs, you'll actually see that we have a separate section for ACH relationships. And what we're trying to do is essentially create an ACH relationship for the account that we just created. So we're going to take the API call that we have here. We're just going to dunk it in, and we're going to be copying over an account ID to show you guys how that works. So we have a whole list of accounts here. So I'm actually going to pick the one that's active right now and go ahead and put in the account ID. Once we've put in the account ID, we're actually going to have to copy over the requests, the sample requests that we have here. And this is just to show you guys how easy it is to do this on Dash if you're doing testing. And we click on send. Looks like that one already has one. Let me actually try with a different account. I should have grabbed one from the top that I just created. 1 second. Yep, so that's queued the ACH relationship, as you guys can see. it has the relationship ID, and that's going to be useful when we're trying to fund the account right now. And you can see like it shows the owner name, the bank account details, bank routing number, all of that information that we passed on from the previous call. Once we set up the ACH relationship, we can actually go ahead and fund the account, and funding is also available on our docs. So kind of a walkthrough of what it looks like when you're trying to set this up. Go straight into the transfer API, and then we're going to the request body that we have here. You guys will see like this is why essentially we need the relationship ID, because that's how we're going to be able to fund the account. The API call is exactly the same. It's just transfers at the end instead of ACH relationship. So accounts, account ID, and then transfers. We're going to pull up the sample. And just quickly place that here. Place in the relationship UUID. And what I'm trying to do. Yep, and we want to send them, let's say 5,000. Yep, so you'll see that the ACH transfer right now has been queued for 5,000, and it's incoming. Essentially, if you're looking at the accounts also, I think actually in the transactions, you should be able to find it. Yep, you'll see there's an incoming ACH for 5,000 that's queued, and we just queued it right now. I'll pause here if you guys have any other questions around creating an ACH relationship and funding an account.
Well, the question is, I have feeling how that about timing in the sandbox environment, and how is the practice in the real environment? How long, what time does it take usually to confirm transaction?
Yeah, so that's a good question. We actually have some of the ACH delay built into Sandbox right now, and I believe we expect that to be an hour, but I would say don't take my word for it. I think sales is much better. It's a much better person to answer that question than I am right now. But there is a little bit of a delay built into the Sandbox, essentially to replicate what we'll be seeing in real life.
So is cash made available right away, or do you have to wait for it to clear?
You do have to wait for it to clear before you can place an order.
Okay. Also, can you have multiple relationships at a time, or is it just one relationship?
So I believe one account is only allowed to have one relationship, but I can definitely double check that for you after the webinar, but I'm pretty sure it's one relationship.
So let's say someone has, created an ACH relationship, invested money, 6 months later, he wants to withdraw money and send it to a different bank account. He has to go and delete the current relationship and create a new one. Is that how that process is expected to work?
Yeah, that's basically how it would work. So you'd have to remove the existing one. And so they would still have an existing account balance, but at that time, until you add the new one, they wouldn't have a method of taking it out. But yeah, to answer your question, you would just have to remove, add the new one, that'll get approved, and then it'll work the same way. Just you'd have to link to that new ID when you're making a request from your end now.
Right, perfect. Thank you.
And I have a question. How do we handle the overdraft process? Let's say if user's account only have $1,000, but we try to deposit like $2,000. Is there a mechanism on Alpaca side to handle that overdraft issue?
Are you trying to say like if you're trying to deposit $2,000 more, or if they're trying to transact with $2,000 more?
I mean, if the user account only have $1,000, but we try to deposit $2,000, right, from that SH link, right? What will happen?
That would get rejected by the bank when it gets processed nightly. And so you're asking who's handling the overdraft fee, or?
Right, exactly.
I guess that would be in that end user's bank account right? I don't think that's something we would be responsible for, since they're just kind of pulling out more money than they have. I'm not the expert on that part, but I believe it's they would get the fee in their respective bank account. Yeah.
So you have what you would create a transfer rejection, right? And that would be captured in the events API, and then we would process that.
Correct. I can't remember if it's in the events API, but there will be a status where if you were to pull it, you would see that transfer was rejected, and that's part of like the response body.
Quick question about funding. If I fund an account through the cash pooling using the general API, is it instantly available to trade? Can I immediately follow up with an order after a journal, or does that need to settle asynchronously?
You're saying you've deposited, like the transfer is cleared and then you've journaled to one of your users now?
No. So assume we have a bunch of money in our firm account, and we basically the user wants to make a trade, and when the user makes a trade, we send the money into the user's account and then process the trade. Is that possible? And this is just because of how because we have to handle Forex, and operationally it's just easier if we can do this real time as the user wants to trade. But essentially what I'm trying to get is the journal API going to instantly make the funds available for trading, or is that, or would there be a delay between the journal API call being made and the funds available to trade?
I believe the journal API has either like a very small like sync up moment, but it should be near instant. So like once you've journaled, that's like an intraday thing, and they'll be able to, the user will be able to use those funds however. And then at the end of the day, it'll actually settle it, and or not settle it, but you'll see the non like intraday values get applied. But to answer your question, yes, the journaling is near real time.
Okay. Thank you very much.
I saw that in the API response, there was something around instant deposit, and I see in your API docs, you mentioned that it's a beta feature, but assuming, we get cleared to use that, how does that work out? Is that just that if it's enabled for our customer accounts, then it'll just show up with a certain balance and that's available in the API response?
Yeah, so I haven't personally worked on that feature, but from what I've heard, I think, yeah, you would see a certain balance up to some limit, I guess, instantly available in there, like for them to do transactions and trades. That's as far as I know, because that's still in beta. So I honestly haven't been exposed to it too much either. But the general idea is yes, it would be like this process, except without the delay, up to like however much gets lent out technically.
And then from our side, I guess just like assuming it were to, let's say the deposit failed in the end, is that something that Alpaca deals with then at that point on, or do we need to do something on our end?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know that part, but we could follow up on that because I don't know what the handling is for that at the moment.
Yeah, our operations department will be able to give some more information on that. Definitely out of the scope of this webinar, because there's a lot of different situations and scenarios to kind of walk through. So that would be a good question also to follow up on and email to sales.
I've got a question about compliance. So you're obviously US based, and you've got all this regulations in the US that you've got covered. I'm kind of referring back to the KYC and this side. I know you can make API calls from kind of pretty much anywhere in the world, other than a few countries. But with those countries, is the compliance on that side covered, or is that something that we'd have to do? So I'm in the UK, for example. Would our side of the compliance have to be handled by us, or is that something that's handled in Alpaca when you set it up?
Yeah, so depends on the partnership type, right? We kind of work with tech partners, with regulated partners as well, and depending on the region. So there's oftentimes that we've worked with in the UK is there's like a regulatory umbrella locally in the UK that you could work with one of those companies that offer that regulatory umbrella. And then therefore you would actually have no limitations around solicitation within the country versus we are a regulated broker dealer in the United States. So we our solicitation kind of limitations will exist in the UK versus if you were to get like local kind of regulatory status or that regulatory umbrella, then you would have a lot less restrictions.
All right, perfect. Thank you. Just a quick question as well. It says a lot on the website about crypto and US stocks. Just confirm, is it just US stocks that you guys cover as well for the trading API?
We actually have a lot in our product roadmap. So let's keep this one. Also, we'll save this one as well. But we are offering other items than just US-based stocks. It's mostly, I believe, ADRs are within the product roadmap. So we can give you some more information on that afterwards also.
Perfect. Thank you.
Quick question. Is the funding process the same for international accounts?
You won't be using an ACH relationship. ACH is domestic only. We have a couple of other options for international accounts. I believe there's wire transfers also available, but it's all included in our docs on the different ways that you can do funding.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
But the sandbox doesn't support this wire transactions, right? Can we simulate these wire transactions in the sandbox also, or is it only for the production? to live?
As far as I know, I don't think, yeah, I think that's only a prod thing because that actually has to get processed by our ops team, like I believe. But I would have to double check. But yeah, I don't think that's available on Sandbox because you can't really mock that very well.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're going to be jumping into how to create an order. And essentially, that's part of the reason why everyone wants to create a trading app is to let their users place orders, buy stocks, buy crypto. So an important element to building your app is obviously going to be doing placing orders. So we're going to take a quick look at what it looks like when you're placing an order. Yep. So kind of where we left off, we funded the account, and what we're going to do now is we're actually going to be placing an order. And if you're just looking at our docs, you'll find it right here. You have the endpoint and you have the sample call. So we're just going to be pulling that. Well, we're going to be copying and pasting it in essentially. It'll ask you for the account ID. So I'm actually going to plop in one of the account IDs that I saved already. One sec. And what we'll want to do after that is copy the request that we have. For this user, let's say we actually want to buy 2 shares of Apple. And we hit send, and it passes the order. So you can kind of see where it's at, what the ID is for the order, the client order ID created at, updated at. These aren't filled out yet because obviously the order takes a second to process. Less than a second, but we are on staging. And you can kind of see the symbol, the asset class, quantity, filled quantity, etc. All of those details. If you actually flip back, either do a get call, or if you're going to transactions and going into orders, you'll actually be able to see that this is the order that just came in, and the CS will update as it's filled. But yeah, that's how you place an order on live testing.
Can I ask something about the ordering? I mean, there's a limit of the API of 1,000 calls per minute. I mean, is that negotiable? Because I mean, quite soon that will not work. I mean, if you have a large app with 1 million users, I guess.
Yeah, that definitely is. I think that's like something you kind of discuss with partnerships when you actually start. But yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. Because yeah, we definitely have partners that do more than that. So
yeah, good. Thanks.
Do you guys have a bulk order API where you can send multiple orders at once and for various different accounts?
Yeah, at the moment, I don't think so. I think it's just you have the single endpoint for it's called like each account mapping. I guess kind of a workaround to that, you could maybe like place a trade for all the stocks in like a firm account or something, and then JNLS or journal a stock to each user. I know that's not ideal for what you're asking, but I guess if you're trying to emulate that functionality, that's something I think you could do.
Okay, are RIAs allowed to do that, or is it only for brokerages that are allowed to do that?
It's a good question. Do you know, Brittany?
It would depend on the country that you're regulated in and kind of the funding methods and what we work out. So that's definitely an in-depth conversation to kind of take offline. There's a lot of factors to consider in that.
Yeah, so quick summary of what we went over today. We looked at setting up broker API Dash, how to create user accounts, overview of the KYC process, thanks to Brittany, how to virtually fund user accounts, and how to easily pass orders on our Dash. And if you guys have any other questions, I guess I know we've been answering questions throughout, but if you guys have any other questions that we missed, feel free to put them in the chat box or unmute and ask them, and we'll spend maybe a couple of minutes answering more questions if you guys have them.
I have one. Fee structures per account. So let's say, certain people subscribe to different things. Is there like an automated API way to, set a fee structure for an account, or some other tool for that? Like, one account is 25 bips because they subscribe to a certain type of service, and another account is like 45 bips. So like we would need an automated way to set that if people subscribe to different things.
Yep. At the moment, I don't believe we have anything that would fit that exactly, but I'm sure there's ways we could get creative with it. So if you want to reach out, and we can kind of talk to all the different product managers, understand what they're building right now, and see if there's something that we could that could potentially be multi-use kind of for that multi-purpose and help you out.
All right. Thank you.
Hi guys. One question before we just jump off. I wanted to ask about the agreements in the accounts API. I see that users have to submit a couple of agreements. Is it, are we getting it from, I see that there's a margin agreement, account agreement, and a customer agreement. Are we going to get the text of those agreements from Alpaca, or we generate it ourselves? I just need to understand how that will work.
Yeah, it's actually a great question that opens up a little bit bigger of a question that we didn't talk about specifically today, but I think it seems like most people on this call have already been obviously exploring what we have to offer and documentation. So I'll get into it a little bit. What you guys see listed in the accounts API are kind of like requirements to open accounts on an API level. But there are some additional requirements that we have from our regulators to collect. So some of the things mentioned there are listed as optional, but they're actually kind of required depending on which type of partnership we have with you. So there's a couple of fields that are a little bit different, including in that there, we do have the customer agreement already created. It's, I'll send you the link to that right after this in the chat. And what we usually recommend is that you link directly, let your users view it directly kind of on the link that I'll send you. Due to the fact that if there's any updates, it'll be automatically updated there and you won't have to do any more engineering work to change your onboarding flow. With that being said, there are some requirements around how you present the customer agreement and some requirements for e-signature. So if you're interested in moving forward and want to know a little bit more about kind of the onboarding flow requirements, then you can also reach out to us directly and we'll get you set up with that.
Okay, cool.
Can I ask, is there any thing on the roadmap to support easier funding internationally via credit card or so forth?
Yeah, I don't know how far down the line, but yeah, there's we're doing a few partnerships through Currency Cloud, and we had one with Rapid, which I think we're bringing eventually to the broker API. I don't know the exact date on that, but yeah, we're kind of first prototyping that through our developer experience in the trading API. But there is definitely a push for that at some point.
Yeah,
we're exploring options, and we're definitely exploring
that would
options
be
for
great
our
for our
roadmap.
international. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
I had a question about the document API. Once we create orders, and document API gives us the possibility to download the trade confirmation and account statement. And my question is, can we get that information with JSON or any other format instead of downloading the PDF?
So I do believe we offer the monthly statements right now in JSON. And then we would just have to kind of check your template that you would be using to send them out just to make sure they have all the same disclaimers and everything. So that setup, we do not have JSON available just yet for trade confirmations.
But for the account statement, it was answered, right? For the account statement, monthly account statement.
Yep, that's available in JSON.
One quick question. Does the API allow one user to execute multiple orders at once?
I see multiple orders at once. I need to double check that. I believe yes. Where you can just like you're saying, pass in an array or queue of orders. Need to double check, but yes, I think so.
So ultimately, we want the user to basically buy multiple fractional shares at one instant, basically.
Right. Yeah, and there's various order types too through the trading API. I'll take a look at those docs specifically because the broker API kind of wraps around those. But yeah, basically everything the trading API supports, you could do for your users. And so there's a few different like entry types, like you said, and like trade, like order types. So
understood. One more question. You said the order is going in real time, so the user is buying in real time. If my application want to add in a markup on the share price,
how you would implement like a markup or like a commission on your end? Yeah, I think that's kind of up to your implementation. I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong, anyone, but I think that's kind of something you handle. Like you put up the gate for that, and then
understood.
You'd make the request in our order. Yeah.
So it comes back to me. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I see.
So I think time's getting kind of close. So I think if you have any additional questions, we should send those out directly to us. Thank you all for first off being really engaged in this webinar. It was great to hear that you guys have already obviously done a lot of your homework and came with some solid questions. So I hope we were able to answer most of your questions, but we really would like you guys to kind of reach out to us with anything else. Also, there's a lot of additional resources in addition to kind of what we went through today. You have Alpaca Learn, where you can go through and kind of check out, you'll find lots of questions that have come up frequently. We decided to kind of create like a learning tool for you to cruise through. There's also the Slack community, which is a really awesome resource. So feel free to jump in and join that. And then broker API documentations will be source of truth for almost everything you could need. Some of the things that are left out of there are more of the regulatory legal questions, which I know we had a few of today. So those, we would hope that you guys just reach out directly. So the two kind of contact emails that I think we sent a few times in the chat, but also we wanted to list here. Anything support related, so tech related, some of the questions that Dean was responding to today, anything like Dean and Seema were responding to today, we would want to send those to broker support at alpaca.markets. They'll be able to answer anything more in depth about functionality of the API and kind of limitations. Anything else should go to sales. So any questions around partnership types, offerings, different product offerings also, if you're curious about our roadmap, sales will be able to walk you through that. So thank you all so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Feel free to reach out to us directly or through the two emails that we just sent you. And we hope that we'll be working with you soon. I'm on the integrations team, so hope to be hearing from you guys in the near future.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.